Jaya Kodanitai Maya Poshashi Kodanitai Maya Poshashi Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Gurudev. Iskon Guruvinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. So reading Srila Prabhupada's pastimes. Srila Prabhupada had heard of the program of his disciple Lokanath Swami, who was taking a small group of men on a bullock cart and preaching in villages throughout India. Lokanath had told Prabhupada how in the course of their travels they had recently visited tirthas such as Badrik Ashram and Bhim Kapoor. Srila Prabhupada was enlivened to hear this, and he then evolved a transcendental desire to go himself on a cart pulled by bullocks to circumambulate the area of Vrindavan. Tamal, Krishna, and Bhavananda, who were serving Prabhupada with increased intimacy, felt themselves unable to support Prabhupada in his desire, since they thought his fragile body could not survive such rough treatment on the roads. But Srila Prabhupada reasoned that dying on parikram is glorious, and he asked them to take him. A controversy developed among the devotees as some said Prabhupada will go on parikram. They said it should immediately be honored as an order from the spiritual master. He wanted it, and it should not be denied. The doctor, however, assured them that Srila Prabhupada's body could not survive the jostling of the car. The many devotees who crowded around Srila Prabhupada's bed held different opinions, and Prabhupada could see this. Following his request, however, Lokanath went out and hired a cart with bullocks and prepared it for the ride. Lokanath and Hamsadhusa suggested that the parikram could go to the city of Vrindavan or visit the 7 main temples of the Goswamis. But then they said that since the next day was Govardhan Puja, Prabhupada could go to Govardhan Hill. Tamal, Krishna, Bhavananda, and Bhattacharya, however, protested adamantly against the parikram. One day experiment, Prabhupada said. It is for one day. Rest assured, I will not die in one day. He liked the idea of going to Govardhan, and we shall make our cooking there, he said. Lokanath Swami, he assured them, was experienced. Very good picnic, he said. Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 2, Hiranyakashipu, King of the Demons. Text 36. Tatra ha preta bandhunam. Tatra ha preta bandhunam. Ashrucha paridevitam. Ashruta paridevitam. Aha tan balako bhutva. Aha tan balako bhutva. Yama swayam upagata. Yama swayam upagata. Tatra pretabandhunam. Ashrucha paridevitam. Ahatan balako bhutva. Yama swayam upagata. Tatraha pretabandhunam. Ashrucha paridevita. Ahatan balako bhutva. Yama swayam upagata. Bandhunam Ashucha Paridevita Paridevita Todalako Bhupa Tataha Pretabandhunam Ashucha Paridevita Ahatan Malako Bhutva Yama Swayam Upagata Tatra there ha certainly Pretabandhunam of the friends and relatives of the dead king Ashrucha hearing Paridevitam the loud lamentation so loud that it could be heard from the planet of Yamaraj. Aha said Tan unto them the lamenting queens. Balaka a boy. Budva becoming. Yamaha Yamaraj the superintendent of death. Swayam personally. Upagata after coming. Translation: while the kings were lamenting for the dead body of the king, their loud cries were heard even from the abode of Yamaraj. Assuming the body of a boy, Yamaraj personally approached the relatives of the dead body and advised them as follows. Responsively, please. While the queens were lamenting for the dead body of the king, their loud cries were heard even from the abode of Yamaraj. Assuming the body of a boy, Yamaraj personally approached the relatives of the dead body and advised them as follows. Sometimes a living entity is forced to give up his body and enter another one according to the judgment of Yamaraj. It is difficult, however, for the conditioned soul to enter another body unless the present dead body is annihilated through cremation or some other means. The living being has attachment for the present body and does not want to enter another. And thus in the interim he remains a ghost. If a living being who has already left his body has been pious, Yamaraj, just to give him relief, will give him another body. Since the living being in the body of the king had some attachment to his body, he was hovering as a ghost, and therefore Yamaraj, as a special consideration, approached the lamenting relatives to instruct them personally. Yamaraj approached them as a child because a child is not restricted but is granted admittance anywhere, even to the palace of a king. Besides this, the child was speaking philosophy. People are very much interested in hearing philosophy when it is spoken by a child. Omagana Javaranda Shaganandana Shalakaya Chakshuran Maritanyana Tasmashi Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swabiga Padantikam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhunichananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchikalpatruvishcha, Kripasindhyevacha, Paritanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha. So, continuing on the story of the dead king and the crying relatives. Thank you. So it was asked the other day, well, why is the body cremated? So that's why it's cremated, because otherwise, in this case also, the king is attached to his body, so he's, he's hanging around as a ghost. It was mentioned in the previous purport that the reason why the queens did not deliver, they were hesitant, was because they were afraid of dying with the dead body of their husband. So part of the reason why we're afraid of somebody dying is because we're also afraid of dying. So if we haven't got a problem with dying, then we see it's not a problem for somebody else to die as well. So that can also be a problem. And so sometimes at a funeral, people become very upset because it reminds them that they're going to die as well. And that doesn't really fit in. I mean, generally people are just trying to get on with their lives and not have to get bothered by tiny things like death, which doesn't really work. If you try to brush aside a very important issue and get on with something which is of a lesser importance, then you have to dumb down your intelligence to just kind of preoccupy yourself with the day-to-day comings and goings of this world. So in that way, people look for different diversions. And at the same time, people are fascinated by death because they don't understand what it is. There was actually a cigarette company, and it made a packet of cigarettes, and the cigarettes was a black box, and they were called Death. Had a skull and bones on the cigarette packet. It said on the packet, if you don't smoke, don't start. Smoking is debilitating, antisocial, and potentially fatal. That was written on the box. And the company sold a lot of cigarettes, actually. People like the idea of dicing with death. So, but it remains a puzzle for people, a mystery for people. And even though we're conversant with the philosophy, to some degree, when we're faced with death, there's a certain element of uncertainty there, because maybe we weren't really a proper devotee in the first place. Maybe we were just pretending out of ego or prestige or something. Maybe I'm not really a real devotee. And now death is coming. Where will I be going? So anyway, generally for a devotee, Krishna's kind. He gives them a little wake-up call. Just gives them gives the carpet a tug, and everything comes tumbling down. And then you get a chance to continue on. So Krishna's kind like that. If you're going to go across an ocean and you're not sure if the boat's going to make it, the best thing to do is fill the boat up with water. And if there's any water coming out of the boat, then you know they're the holes you have to attend to. So the vessel is the human form of life. Atvam sandashito datra dushtaram pushtitetam kalam safaharam kalam safaharam dana. I know the tune, but not the words. Atvam sandashito datra dushtaram pushtitetam kalam safaharam galam. Karnadana Ivanavam. Karnadara is the captain. We accept you as a captain of the ship. We think that we've met your goodness by the will of providence, just so that we may accept you as captain of the ship for those who cross this difficult ocean of Kali, which deteriorates all the good qualities of a human being. Haram is the destroyer, and Sattva Haram, and the good qualities Sattva are being destroyed. So so the human form of life is our vessel, and we need a captain of the vessel also, and that captain is the spiritual master, and he guides us across the ocean of repeated birth and death, so that we can make this the last lifetime. And people are also fascinated by ghosts. There was a program people were telling me that I was giving books out to on the street, that there's a program where this crew of people, they go to a house that's haunted, and they have all these fancy tech instruments for detecting the presence of a ghost. And then people are fascinated to see, because if there is ghosts, then that means there's a chance that I won't be finished at the time of death. There's something after death. And when I joined in Chaitanya College, there was a few. Chaitanya College was quite an old building, and there's a whole history behind it. One was that a lady had a hole in her cheek. It started off as a small imperfection in her cheek, and they used to put this powder on that had lead in it, and that just made the hole bigger and bigger. And there was some history behind it, and then afterward there seemed to be some things that happened which would indicate that they were still hanging around. So anyway, these become other inconvenient truths or annoying observances for people that want to just lead a material life. So they brush aside these different experiences that they may have had and just try to get on with the real thing, which is shopping and watching telly. Let's get the priorities right here, okay? And these are the lesser things. Well, we'll deal with them. I mean, if it is real, I'll know for sure at the time of death. So Yamaraj is mentioned, and Yamaraj has his assistants, the Yamadutas, and when the living entity reaches the end of his life, then Yamaraj's servants come and they escort the living entity from his gross body in his subtle body to the court of Yamaraj, and there he's assessed. So Srila Prabhupada's teacher said that how could there be such a thing as karma, because there's no witness. So the Yamadutas are keeping a track of what's going on. There's a special scribe, writes down all the things, then the Yamadutas look at the report and say, okay, bit of a character, this one. And then he gets taken for a tour of the hellish planets. Generally, nobody is completely free of bad karma in the material world. No, I couldn't either. Usually, there's some good karma and there's some bad karma. Everyone, and sometimes you get the option: do you want the results of your good karma now, or do you want the results of your bad karma now? There's one story like that. So best is to perform devotional service, because devotional service, pure devotional service, it frees us from good and bad. And then the path becomes clear, and this can be the last life on the samsara, the wheel of birth and death. Or if you don't want to finish completely, then you can go in between the material world and the spiritual world, nirvana, the place where the Mahatattva is, all the elements are unmanifest, and you can merge into the... Problem is you can be in the nirvana, Mahatattva river for trillions of years, but because you can't experience anything, you're basically switched off. Then when you come out, you don't... There's no experience of any time. So it's all... You don't really take anything with you. But if you can go beyond the dividing line and go into the spiritual world, but to go into the spiritual world, then there has to be a relationship with Krishna, or with Krishna's incarnations, his expansions, Vishnu, Narayan. Otherwise, you have to come back. So the living being has attachment for the present body. The problem with attachment for the present body is the present body is changing all the time. So generally when we're attached to the body, we're attached to a younger version of the body. And as the body's getting older, we're kind of really having to really work hard to see the face in the mirror as the person we know we are. You've got to get the angle just right, not see the bags. If you were dropped off, if you're a teenager and you were dropped off on a desert island, and then 50 years later they come back with a mirror, you get a real fright when you look in the mirror. So we're more attached to the conception of our body than we are to the body itself, actually. They say that for actors, it's not recommended that they look at the film of themselves, because when you see how gawky and foolish you look, then it takes away your confidence to act. So that's what they advise. So we're more attached to the conception of what we think our body looks like and who we think we are. But still, it's an attachment. I mean, the attachment to the body is false, even if we are just attached to the body as it is. If we like being old and wrinkly, and it's still false anyway. And then we have the subtle idea of who we think we are. So the problem with the idea of who you think you are is, if you believe something's right, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's one of your values. It just means you think it's right. You may have intellectually accepted something, and therefore you think, well, that's me off the hook. I completely agree. I don't think it's right to speed in 30-mile limits. It's totally bogus. So I'm okay. I've got that value. Then the guy's driving down the road the next day, and he's late for something, and he's hurtling down the road at 60 miles an hour. So we may believe something, but how we act is a truer indication of our values than what we believe. But that would take a certain amount of introspection, and maybe feedback would be helpful as well, as to what we actually are like. And everyone say, yeah, Prabhu, we know you all agree with being humble. But you're not very humble, actually, Prabhu, the way you... Am I not? I thought I was the most humble. You're definitely not the most humble, Prabhu. So we're attached. And how to get free from attachment? One of the problems with being attached is that it can make you lose confidence. When you realize that you are attached to material things, then you can lose the confidence to want to give them up. And even to chant, actually, chanting the holy name, you're required to be enthusiastic when you're chanting, and you're also required to be confident. So sometimes when you're chanting, as you're chanting, you slacken. You're chanting, and then something comes up and you think, oh, that's not good. And then you slow down, Hare Krishna, Hare. Get a little bit mental, a little bit kind of discouraged. And so you lose your confidence. So you have to be enthusiastic and you have to be confident. No, this is the goal. I'm going for this. I don't care. I'm still going for it. And then patient. So three requirements at least, actually 6, but those 3 initially anyway are very important. Also, avoiding bad association, following the footsteps of the Acharyas, and not wanting worldly things. So, since the living being in the body of the king had some attachment to his body, he was hovering as a ghost. And so Yamaraj decided he would turn up to help relieve the king. So they'd all been hanging around for too long. Immediately the body should be burnt. And I think it was mentioning if it's the day before the sunrise, the next day, the body has to be destroyed. So now we're going to hear Yamaraj as a child instructing. And I don't know whether it's this particular pastime. There is one pastime where all these people are crying, and this sage comes out of the bushes, and he says, what is wrong with everybody? And everybody says, he's dead, it's dead. I'm so sad. And Yamaraj says, well, you're all going to die as well, so why don't you save your tears for yourself? So that's another funny thing as well, as everyone's crying like they're immortal. And what a shame, that he died, as if they're not going to die, They're going to die anyway, today or tomorrow. So they should be concerned with what's going to happen to them. Any questions or comments? Yes, Pip?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, thank you. One thing I've wondered about is like when somebody enters into the Mahatattva, into Nirvana, then am I right in saying like one of the qualifications to enter into that is to have no karma left? Because then I don't understand, how could you come back to the material world if you've got no karma to fulfill?
Well, karma is the after effect of desire. And if you don't have a positive desire, then you end up with negative desire. So you may be in a Mahatattva and then you think, I'd love a Mars bar, and that's it, you're back in Les Mahego, looking for a Mars bar on the shelves of Tesco. So the desires are the potential problem. The karma, you can get free of the karma, but getting free of the desires, unless you do devotional service, then they're always there in a latent form. And that desire is the original desire of the living entity is to interact with Krishna in a living relationship. But if you don't have that, then you've got to try and interact with the material energy in a living relationship. Although it's actually not a living relationship, it's a lusty relationship in the material world, because there's always a motivation there. And that's the definition of lust. Lust is like iron, and pure love is like gold. So one is of great value, and the other one is not of such good value. It's a very base, gives off a very base energy, iron. That's why there's so much road rage. People are running around in lumps of iron. So it really brings out the bad side in you, you know. Can you imagine having jewelry? Oh, look at it. She's got the latest jewelry. It's made out of iron. A nice big iron necklace and big iron earrings. But she's really grumpy since she got that jewelry. So it's a base metal, very crude. And then something which is very refined and very special, of great value, is pure love. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's actually not love, it's prema. That's what the world needs. Prema, pure love. Any other questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So, kind of, I somewhat understand difference between Krishna and Vishnu. What is the difference between Vishnu and Narayan?
Vishnu and Narayan. Prabhupada Prana will answer that question. Do you know what's the difference between Vishnu and Narayan? Well, as far as I know, the Vishnu Dutas, Vishnu and Narayan is the same. It's referring to the same person or persons. Yeah, I've been reading just recently about reverence, awe and reverence. So it's very obvious that Vishnu is God, Narayan is God because of the arms. It's like it's not the usual. It's not it's like occupying the same area, you know. So it looks it's kind of, when you look, you can't help but think that this is something very special. So in Vaikuntha, everyone's aware that Vishnu, Narayan, is God, and then Krishna is in his most human-like aspect, where the residents of Goloka, they're not directly aware that Krishna is God. They're interacting with him as a person. And sometimes Krishna is defeated when they have a wrestling match. And then because he's been defeated, there's a little blue book about Krishna's pastimes. And it says that some of the cowhead boys, when they see the demon coming, they're thinking, Krishna can't, I've just defeated Krishna yesterday in the wrestling match, and he's trying to fight this demon, I need to go and do it instead, because Krishna won't be strong enough to do it, And Krishna enjoys that intimacy, that lack of reverence. That's why when Lord Brahma came down and started offering prayers, it was a disturbance for Krishna, because all the cowhead boys knew him as just one of the fellow cowheads. And then Brahmas, they're doing all these special prayers, and it's all with reverence. And during the prayers, one of the cowhead boys goes up to Krishna and bats his peacock feather because there's a bit of dust on his peacock feather, so he knocks it off for him. And Lord Brahma and all the demigods are like, "What are you doing?" That's the supreme personality of Godhead. And then there's the story of Krishna was the gopis were searching for Krishna, and they were getting close because they have so much devotion. Krishna couldn't disappear from them, so he thought, well, I can't get away from Sawardo, I'll just manifest 4 arms. And then they said, which way did Krishna go? And Vishnu went like that. And then Radharani came and said, which way did Krishna? And his arms, he was trying to keep his 4 arms, and eventually it went into 2 arms. And then she saw, oh, you're Krishna.
According to Sri Google, then the difference between Vishnu and Lord Narayana is Narayana is 1,000 names of Vishnu.
The equivalent of 1,000 names is the same as saying Vishnu once. Saying Narayana.
And but Narayana is also considered the supreme being in the Vaishnavism, which exceeds Vishnu's traditional duties of protecting the universe. But I'm not sure where that origin is.
And is it 1,000 names of Vishnu equals 1 of Krishna? You heard something like that?
All the names of Vishnu, like I'm not sure if it is equal to 1 name of Krishna, but all the names of Vishnu, 1 name of Krishna, 3 names of Lord Ram, 1, but I'm not sure if that is equal to the equal societal sense.
Yeah, I don't think we can take this as authority here because there's no saying where the source of it is. And then there's other comments that come later on, which just sounds quite speculative.
Yeah. Yeah, what they do in some, one devotee was in somebody's house in India, and they had an altar, and they were playing it safe, so they just put everybody on the altar. And there was even, because there was Jesus, Sai Baba, Ganesh, Vishnu, Narayan, Durga, and then there was also Superman. And so the devotee was saying, how come Superman's up there? And they said, well, he's blue and he wears a cape, so stick him on as well, just be on the safe side. So then it becomes a hodgepodge, because they don't understand the distinction. Everything just gets merged into one. Which is interesting, isn't it? If Srila Prabhupada hadn't come to the West, and maybe in the course of our sojourn in this material world, we may have ended up in a Hindu temple, but there's no certainty that we would have taken up chanting 16 rounds, following the 4 regs, and helping spread Krishna consciousness in the West. Shishi Koditani Maipo Shashi Ki Jai. She Tulsi Nath Maharaj Ki Jai. She Giri Hari Lal Ki Jai. She Singire Bhagavan Ki Jai. Any other questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Karike Guru.
Somebody asked me how to deal with death of somebody close to you. And I said, I don't know. Nobody close to me died yet.
You're gonna try and work out when it happens.
I can't tell before that.
Yeah, a couple of years ago now, my mother had a problem with her heart, where you have to recalibrate the heart with an electric shock thing, and so the way the news was told to me didn't look like there was going to be a lot of hope. So I was surprised how upset I was, because I thought, well, I've been a devotee now for so many years, and it won't bother me. And actually, the attachment to the mother goes very, very deep. The psychologists say that if you break up your mind, there's three parts to your mind. One is what you, the adults, are saying. One is what you, the child, are saying. And one is what your parents are saying. There are three different aspects of you. And they say the strongest part of your personality is just the child. So if you burst into tears when something goes wrong, that's your child side coming out. So the parents are like in us, they're like part of our identity. They're the soil that fertilized and nourished us when we grew up. And then suddenly that's removed, so we can feel very, and it's not, we shouldn't try to snuff out that feeling and think, oh, this is just Maya, they're not the body, I'm not the body, and just, and not grieve, because that causes another problem. There was a Buddhist once, he was crying at a funeral, and a man went over to him and he said, I thought you were transcendental to all this. And the Buddha said, this is how I transcend all this, by allowing the lamentation to come out. And that's part of the process of us assimilating what's going on, how we process it, actually, when there's a great loss or a great grief. And but the difference is with a materialist, he'll go through that grief, feel very sad, but then he'll just continue on. He'll be down in the pub again the next night, and things will be, as they say, life goes on. So they continue on. Whereas with a devotee, he'll get very sad and upset, and then he'll go and he'll be thinking of that person who's departed, be offering prayers. Like one of the Matajis, he was saying, she was upset about somebody that was sick, so she chanted an extra round for him, So when you do things like that for those who've left, then it makes you feel good that you're helping the person in some way, that you can be of some use. Part of the reason why people are lamenting so much is because they feel they're so useless. They can't do anything for the person now. And that makes them feel helpless, useless, like they've failed the person in some way. So for us as devotees, we may lament that we've lost that person, but then immediately we're able to take up some positive action, some positive strategy. When my father, when his father died, my dad said, what do you think I can do for him? And it was a Kadashi. It was a special Kadashi that day, which is whatever austerity you perform, all that benefit goes to your relative. So we decided he would do the full Nirjal Ekadashi, no water. And at that time he was chanting, so he did some chanting. And then the next day he broke the fast. He said when he broke the fast, he felt like his father was really pleased with him, that he'd done that for him, So then he felt happy. He felt happy about it in the sense that he'd been a positive contributing factor to that person's demise, which we generally don't really get a chance to feel, We just become painfully aware of how ignorant we are of the most startling fact of the material world is that every one of us is going to die, And it's the thing that we do the least about. And it kind of undermines whatever else we're doing, You can't tell your dad when he's dying, well, don't worry, Dad, I just bought a massive car. It's so fast, this car, and I made £1 million. I'm just like, well, is that going to do for your dad, It's of no use at all. Any other questions or comments?
Hare Krishna. So is it like someone entering, say, nirvana or into the Mahatattva, or has he not got to be desireless completely? Like he's karma free, so he can enter, but...
Well, it's interesting because the source of desire is the soul, and the soul is eternal. So you could like stop breathing for a minute. You can keep that up for a while, but eventually you'll have to desire. So you could stop temporarily, but sooner or later, it's part of your part of what you're made up of is that you're made up of desire. I mean, if we say desire, what it is really, it's love. So you can stop loving anything for a while, but eventually it will well up, you know. It's interesting. I was listening to Srila Prabhupada this morning. He was talking about the mirage, and he was saying people are running toward the mirage. So the learned person, he doesn't disagree that the mirage is attractive. You know, the idea of getting some water in the desert is very, very appealing. But he's just intelligent enough to know that you won't find it there, that the water you're looking for, it isn't there, you know. So a person in the desert may decide, well, that's fine then. If the water is not there, then I'm just going to stop wanting water. And he could just sit down in the desert and he could stop wanting any water. But eventually he will die, and the desire for the water will still be there. It's just that he's given up any hope of getting the water there. But it doesn't really solve the problem, you know. Like you could go to the doctor and say, my arm is really sore. And it's when I go like that, it's really sore. And then you decide, I know what I'll do, I'll get it amputated. So you go to the doctor the next day and, yeah, my elbow's fine now. Because I haven't got one anymore. So it's the same with desire. You could cut off the desire temporarily. And you would think, well, let's solve the problem now. I just have to be a stone and everything's fine. But then eventually the desire to want to have arms and do things again will be there, you know. They have this thing, sometimes people have had a limb chopped off, but they still have an itchy knee. And they can't scratch their knee, but it still feels like it's there. You know, they have like a subtle attachment still. So the physical knee is gone. The whole leg's been removed, but they still feel like they have an itchy knee. But now they can't scratch the knee because the leg's gone. So just because you remove something doesn't mean that it goes away. It may temporarily do that. So yet it's imperative that we get this through the educational system. Eventually, the kids are being taught this from a very early age. This is it's also useful information, and it would change the way people behaved. It could be introduced in such a way that, you know, you don't have to go subscribe to a particular faith, but these are just observations which will help you in life. These 4 activities will cause you a lot of problems: intoxication, illicit sex, gambling, meat eating, and meditation and prayer to God will give you peace, tranquility, and meaning. That could be put there in a seedling form, and then later on it could be cultivated. You know, we've all had things when we were kids, and it's kind of piqued our curiosity, and we've not been given any sufficient answers there and then perhaps for the first time when we come across Srila Prabhupada's books. I remember I was thinking about God, and I was thinking, well, I wonder if God's actually knows what you're thinking. You know, can you just turn up once a week at a designated building, and you should be okay, you know, as long as you're a good boy when you're in the building. And then I read Srila Prabhupada in one of his books said, God is aware of everything, including our psychic movements. So in one sense, God is more aware than we are because his consciousness is unlimited. So he's aware of everything. We're only aware of a very small picture of what's going on. We're not even really aware of ourselves. What's going on? I mean, we're aware of the material body to some degree, but we're not aware of how, like, you know, just recently, I'm trying to breathe, and I'm not aware of what it is. You know, like if a shark gets a knock on the head and it goes unconscious, it drowns because the shark has to be conscious, has to consciously breathe. So a shark can never sleep. It just kind of swims around. It doesn't do too much when it's resting, but it always has to be conscious. So I don't know what it is that's making me breathe when I sleep. It just goes on automatically. I don't know what it is when I eat something and it gets transformed into into marrow and blood and flesh to form the body. There's so much going on that I'm just not aware of. And God's aware of everything going on in His body, your body, everybody's body. So if you can connect to that consciousness, this word yoga comes. This is where the word yoga comes from, and it means to link up, to connect. So through yoga, we connect with God, and then He enlightens us. He directs us in the way which is going to be most beneficial for us. So if you have an important decision to make, chant your rounds first, and then make the decision. There's like an internal dialogue going on all the time between you and God, and in that book, Japa Meditations, it refers to a book called Walks with Dad. And this lady had become very influential when she grew up, and she'd said that her core values had been formed by having these walks with her dad in the morning. Her dad would tell her so many things about life, and later on, she was able to implement these things. So in the same way, in the morning we walk. Well, if we're falling asleep, we get up and we walk with God during our japa, and then we have this dialogue, and Krishna explains all the different solutions to our problems in a very kind of mystical way. It's very mystical, actually. I remember I was at Soho Street, and I was doing service there, and I'd got up and I had a lot of problems on my mind, and I started chanting, and as I was chanting, it was like having a plate of spaghetti and having it all unraveled. Everything was cleared up, and at the end of my japa, everything was fine. So that's why we do that before we do anything else. First thing in the morning, we bathe, we sing some songs of glorification, and then we enter into a dialogue with the Lord. And we don't have to say, what's this and what's that. We just have to chant. But as we're chanting the Tesham Ivana Kampatam, Jnana Deepena Bhasvata. Jnana Deepena is the lamp of knowledge, and Bhasvata radiates out into the heart. So that lamp of knowledge shines in the heart, and we become illuminated. And then all the dark things, they get cleared away. Wherever there is God, Krishna Surya Sama Maya Hayandakara. Wherever there is God is like sunshine, and wherever there is Maya, she is like darkness. So wherever there is Krishna, there is no darkness. And no darkness means no ignorance, no fear, no attachment, automatically.
Wondering, was Prabhupada ever asked on like someone wanting to chant extra rounds for someone else's health issues or something? Was Prabhupada ever asked, and if we know what was Prabhupada's response there?
Whether Prabhupada recommended praying for somebody or chanting for somebody?
Just generally, like we hear, right, that okay, my mother or someone is not well, maybe I will chant extra round for him or her, or something health related or finance or whatever related. So was Prabhupada ever asked this, that Prabhupada, my mother is not well?
Well, I don't have a direct reference. Anybody have any direct reference which Srila Prabhupada's recommended? I mean, he recommended when he was sick that's why we sing the Namaste prayers. Namaste Narasingaya was for his protection. Yeah. Yeah.
And this extra round must be nothing like a sort of karma kand activity.
Well, sometimes people give me a donation and they'll say, I'm giving you this so that my business does well, And then I go back the next year and they say, I'm not going to give you a donation because I gave you a donation and my business has gone terrible. And one man was saying that to me, and I was saying, well, you're still alive because actually there was COVID going around. This was just after COVID when it started going around again. I was saying, well, there's so many people that died and you're still alive. So why don't you thank God for that He's protected you and helped you in that way? So it's nice to pray to God for things, but then you also have to be aware that it may not be your preconceived idea of how you think things were going to work out. So you have to kind of leave it open to let God do what he needs to do. Like they were praying like anything, please let Srila Prabhupada stay with us. And Prabhupada was saying, it's very possible if Krishna wants that to happen, it's very possible that it can. It's certainly, Krishna, it was not beyond his power to do that if he wanted to. But then it became apparent that Krishna wanted something else. And so then the devotees have to recalibrate. Well, we thought that this would be the best for us, but Krishna thinks that this would be the best for us. So, okay, I need to figure that one out. How is that going to be better for me than this, Maybe anyway, there's a lot of different things that it could be, and to appreciate God, we have to also appreciate that what he's doing is for the best. You could chant some extra rounds or do some prayers or follow a Kadashi to help that person. But how he gets helped, it may be that the person was supposed to win the lottery, and then you ask Krishna to protect the person. So Krishna he looks after the person by making sure he doesn't win the lottery, because he knows that would be worse for the person. Because when you perform devotional service, your good karma as well as your bad karma gets. So you may have had something that was going to happen to you, which would have been good for you, but that would have ultimately been bad for you, because then you would have been more involved in the material energy. So Krishna steps in and he makes something else take place, and then you're forced to take more shelter of him, which is actually the better thing, ISKCON Govinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, go to Premanandi.
His Grace, Jai.
All of you ki jai.